Mark Carney's 2026 budget is being sold as a plan to build Canada strong, but what it really details is record spending, fiscal denial, and what I'll call Canada broke. Let's dig in.
Budget 2025 is a bold strategy to unleash over $1 trillion in total investment in Canada over the next 5 years.
The Liberals are once again trying to spin reckless spending as fiscal strength. But the numbers, well, they paint a different story. This so-called Build Canada Strong budget adds another $78 billion in deficit. That's $10 billion higher than what the parliamentary budget officer predicted. $78 billion. The Liberals are bankrupting this country in real time, and they're calling it generational investment. But let's not sugarcoat it. This is just generational debt. Conservative MP Shuv Majumdar says it's akin to never paying your credit card bill, ever. That's Mark Carney's version of fiscal management, where deficits are just investments and debt is someone else's problem. A $78.3 billion deficit with no plan to balance the books. And when he said that our younger generation would need to sacrifice more, perhaps what he really meant and should have said is that they need to be financially enslaved by government overspending.
The budget I present today comes at a time of profound change, a time to build. The world is undergoing a series of fundamental shifts at a speed, scale, and scope not seen since the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Despite the fancy talk about sovereignty and strength, this budget nearly doubles last year's deficit and locks future generations into deeper debt. Meanwhile, Ottawa insists that we're still on solid fiscal ground. That's if, by ground, they mean quicksand. Ottawa blames global economic shifts and something called a generational rupture, yet it increasingly seems that the real rupture is in credibility, accountability, and competence. After almost a decade of reckless overspending, this government is still trying to pass off ballooning deficits as investments, passing off political indulgence as though it's fiscal prudence.
Budget 2025 is not only about what we build, but also about how we build. We are building sustainably with low-carbon investments that will make Canada more competitive. We are building in solidarity with workers, creating good union jobs across the skilled trades. And we're building inclusively, in full partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And above all, we are building Canadian, with Canadian workers using Canadian steel, Canadian lumber, Canadian expertise.
Liberals love to brag about Canada's low debt to GDP ratio, as if that number helps anyone struggling to pay for food, mortgages, or heat, while Ottawa borrows at historic levels to fund programs that don't make life any easier for working Canadians. Take Chapter 3 of the budget, called Empowering Canadians, for instance, where the state broadcaster, the CBC, will receive a whopping $150 million, supposedly to strengthen its mandate to serve the public and better reflect the needs of Canadians. Part of that will also go towards exploring a partnership with Eurovision, an international song competition organized by the European Broadcasting Union, because nothing really says empowerment like a flamboyant, entertainment-focused song contest. That's on top of hundreds of millions more for Canadian artists, creators, and cultural industries, because apparently they can't sustain themselves. The Liberals claim they'll spend less to invest more, but that's laughable when the so-called savings of $60 billion over 5 years pales in comparison to the $450 billion in new capital spending over the next 5 years. The minuscule tax cuts are immediately offset by inflation that the same government helped create, and now they're just printing more money, while record numbers of Canadians can't afford food. At the end of the day, the reality is pretty grim. Spending is outpacing growth, debt climbs as real investment, not taxpayer-injected investments, tank. Because what Ottawa calls Canada strong looks a lot more like Canada's broke. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Despite a bloated bureaucracy that isn't any better at delivering services and record spending with no plan to rein any of it in, Canadian MPs will get their yearly pay raise on April 1st. While everyday Canadians struggle with inflation and high costs, MPs reward themselves. Tell the Liberals to stop this automatic pay hike at stopthepayhike.com. That's stopthepayhike.com.